for clicking on the video. Welcome back to the State of Destiny 2. This is the video where I talk about the hot button issues in the community and my thoughts on the game as we proceed to move forward. So first and foremost, let's get the obvious out of the way. What the hell happened to the June video that you said was coming? Well, to put it quite simply, the launch of Season 7 went exceptionally well, in my opinion, with very little things that needed discussion. Additionally, many of the other content creators already out there nailed on the head my talking points, so I didn't really feel the need to make another 30-minute video. And I forgot to actually post that I wasn't going to do that because of said videos that were already out there. So if you were expecting one in June, didn't get it, sorry, but I didn't feel the need to do it. Today, however, with Shadowkeep now getting about a full week out there, I wanted to actually spend some time to talk about some of the things I'd really like to see Bungie do moving forward, especially given the change of pace that Year 3 and beyond seems to be making. I also want to address some of my concerns with the changes to the game that were made with this previous update. Now, this is going to be quite a lengthy video, so up here at the top, there's going to be a nice little list of timestamps that you can click on if you would like to skip ahead to certain parts. Otherwise, if you're here for the long haul, well, let's just get right into it. So first and foremost, I have a category which I've called 2.6.0 or 3.0. And why does Bungie seem to be afraid of numbering any version of their game higher than 3.0? So this is actually kind of something silly. And I was actually thinking of this when I booted up on day one of Shadowkeep, and why is Bungie afraid of 3.0 or above? Rise of Iron went from 2.5 to 2.6 in Destiny 1, and even though this was kind of an expansion level release, we still have the 2 in front of the version numbering. So even though we had a complete revamp of the armor system, the new major system additions with finishers and artifacts were still at 2.6. I don't get this fear of tagging as 3.0, but I think this may be relevant. Jokes aside, there's a few things I wanted to talk about for this update. We'll go through the things I was happy with and then things that I think they probably could have done a little better. So first and foremost, let's talk about the good, because we like to hear about the good. First and foremost, raid banners and old raids. That was a great thing, and I'm happy that Bungie did that, especially with New Light. This old content remains kind of relevant, and it's getting some tuning in these regards. Secondly, Shattered Throne being accessible at any time and access through the director. That's a great thing. Shattered Throne was one of my favorite pieces of content in Year 2, and now we can experience it at any time we please. I've already done it a couple times since it's come out in this form. Thank you. Really happy. Additionally, with this same notion, the ability to launch the Black Armory Forges at any time through the destination map instead of having to spawn in, sparrow your way all the way over there, and then run to the forge and activate it. That's another great thing. I'm glad they finally got around to doing this. Seasonal ranks. At first, I was kind of on the fence about this whole battle pass model, but after getting to play it for a couple days, I can actually give a great big thumbs up here. Progression feels really well. Like, it's not a very slow, long grind that you're going to have to do. I've only played for 4 days, and I'm already rank 43, I think, in there. This allows players to constantly move up in the game, even if there's not really anything they're doing. So it's the sense of moving the needle forward, even if by a small amount. The artifact also does something very similar here, so big thumbs up. Also, I really like the fact that they made repeatable destination bounties, so you can actually go in, get some bounties for the day, and then there's another button for doing bounties repeatedly. So this is also nice. It always gives a sense of there's something to do alongside with the sense of constantly moving forward. So great additions. I'm glad that Bungie got around to doing this. So that kind of summarizes the big non-sandbox related things. I have a category for sandbox if you saw the timestamps things earlier. So let's talk about the things that I wasn't really thrilled about with 2.6.0. First and foremost, this actually might be a surprise to some people, but the whole concept of finishers, I don't really like that they spent so much time developing this when they could have been working on things that needed addressing from the vanilla release, like subclasses. I'm still waiting for the revamp of the subclass trees, and I think that development time probably could have been better spent there instead of making finishers in place of that. Also, the changes to the buff stacking and debuff stacking, although Bungie really didn't want players to melt bosses, this is kind of the point of RPG games. Take advantage of each class's unique talents, mix them together, and find out through this numbers game what gives you the most effective games. So that's kind of the whole point of the RPG game. You stack buffs, you hit targets with stacking debuffs, and then you maximize your damage output that way. Now we're just kind of do this monotonous, everything does the same kind of deal where there's not really anything unique to it anymore. Again, I understand why they did it, but I wasn't really a big fan of this. Third on the list, I'll have a great big section on this later, but deprecating all of the year 2 powerful sources, I don't think that was a good move. I know some people weren't really happy with constantly going back to doing things like the Dreaming City again, doing the Forges, doing Reckoning, doing Menagerie, but this is kind of the point of an RPG game as well. You go back to do things to constantly move your needle forward. Activities that are meant to be in-game in nature should retain that in-game flag. And this means the old raids, content like the Menagerie, Reckoning, and like Harmony Forges. They should retain that in-game status. In regards to the competitive playlist, I had a whole video on this a while back. All that still applies here. I was under the impression in this update from a previous blog post that glory ranks would lock once you hit a new tier. So you rank up to Brave, you rank up to Heroic, Fabled, Mythic. Each tier would be a locking point. So I was under the impression that you would get to like Mythic 1, for instance, and then you could never drop below that. Apparently this only works for Fabled 1, and I don't think that that was a good move to change from the locking at each of the points to only one tier. I had a whole video on discussions of why this needs to change. If you need any reference, feel free to go back and take a look at that. Additionally, I'm not a fan of survival. I have never been a fan of this game mode. I'm not happy that this is the only glory playlist now. I'm happy that there is solo queue now. This is a good first step, but I really think that more work still needs to be done. And again, Bungie has stated that there will be a renewed focus on PvP moving forward, and this is only the first step. So we'll see what happens in the seasons to come, but, you know, for a first step, it's better than nothing, I'll say that much. Next up, while I did give the thumbs up on the change in the forges, the thumbs down here comes to the fact that you can only do one of the forges in a given day, because now access to individual forges is gone. You can only start a forge through the director on Earth, and only one of them is active per day. Given the fact that there are still triumphs out there that require you to get hundreds upon hundreds of kills with specific weapons at the forges, this is not a good thing. I really think Bungie should go back and make all of the forges accessible at once. You're kind of having a repeat of the change to what happened with Destiny 1 missions being accessible on the map to Destiny 2, where now it's only available through the Heroic Story playlist. Something else that needs to change, by the way. Finally, servers. We need to talk about servers, Bungie. The launch day blunder of Shadowkeep was what I called expected and unacceptable at this point. Destiny's been out for 5 years. This is something that Bungie should have anticipated. They should have seen this large influx of players coming, and they should have been ready for it. The fact that we had servers down for multiple hours on the first day is unacceptable at this point, really. I will have discussion on this later. You cannot blame the New Light people, folks, so stop doing that. This was a server-side issue, but the fact is they had a 24-hour maintenance before the release. They should have seen this coming. They should have been ready for it. Alright, so that's the end of the 2.6.0 discussion. So now I'm going to move into the second part, which is the Shadowkeep storyline. So I'm going to give a fair warning here. There will be spoilers. If you don't want story spoilers, the text box up here has the timestamp that you can skip ahead to the next category where we don't talk spoiler stuff. And I'm going to give you 5 seconds to go to the time step. 5 seconds. story spoilers. So, first and foremost, I was absolutely not surprised that the Darkness ship was there. I was expecting this. Like, I was telling my clan that, hey, it's gonna happen. They're gonna do something. This was made all but inevitable in their lead up discussions, the year 3 reveal stream. I was actually quite surprised that they hit that right in the very first mission. That was great. I loved the first mission. And then you see the Darkness ship, and then, oh, hello, Crota, why are you slapping me again? So that was really fun. Second, we had the return of Eris and the intro mission following her. I don't think that one was done too well. It was more like a adventure, and I felt it was very short. It didn't set any kind of context as to the why or how events over the last 5 years were proceeding. I think Bungie never really explained the context of the keep itself either in this regards. What's the purpose of it? What have the Hive been doing? It was just kind of go in, kill the nightmares, get their essence, then come back. After this, we went and hunted down the Nightmare of Omnigul. So everyone's favorite screaming wizard Omnigul was back. And you discover that you can't make any more of your special nightmare armor without more hive magic, which is stored inside the keep itself. So you went from story to, okay, go do the new strike. So got to play the new strike after that. Strike was good, but surprise, there's Daughters of Crota? Question mark. Again, no context at all. Why is she there? It was quite literally do the strike. Oh, look, Crota's daughter is here. She's pissed at you for obvious reasons. Go kill her. That's basically what it was. After the strike, however, what happened was probably my personal high mark on the Shadowkeep storyline, which was a mission where you had to go to the depths of the Hellmouth and recover the cryptoglyph. So you go down, you find this tomb, you go into this really amazingly rendered area. Like, the atmosphere of it was just phenomenal. So you're like the bottom of the Hellmouth, crossing this bridge that's reminiscent of the Crota's End Raid. You can see the Darkness ship looming in the background. It's all like dark green and stuff. You get to this cryptoglyph, you kill the bosses, you recover it, and then everything just goes hell to high water. So you can't get out. You can't get teleported out. You're burdened, so you can't even use your super ability. So you just have to run. Like, you don't even stop to shoot anything. You just run. So this mission had lots of in-your-face moments. The ending sequence was absolutely phenomenal. It gave me a lot of reminiscence of the Taken King mission Lost to Light, where you had to go get the crystal from Crota's chamber, and then had to run away from Orcs' hordes that were chasing you after you took the crystal. So that was really fantastic. I love that mission, Bungie. Thank you. Please do more of that stuff. After that, what happened was Bungie took a page of success from their Forsaken expansion and applied it to Shadowkeep. So the storyline branched off into 3 separate little mini missions you could do that were kind of like the Baron hunts from Forsaken, but they were nightmare hunts instead. So they were 3 short mini missions. You got to go back and fight 3 classic D1 bosses. It was Tanix, Skolas, and Fogoth. And then after you did this, you were able to actually complete your armor set. So in order to do this, you had to go off planet for one of those things, and that was actually one of the only things you got to leave the moon for the story related aspect of it. And then you came back to the moon and did your other essences. So once you finish that, you get to the last story mission, and yes, it already was the last story mission. So you go back down to the area where you were in the very first mission, and you get pulled into this Darkness ship. And it was kind of supposed to be this great big reveal moment, like, what are they? But instead, we kind of get this, they're talking through your ghost, and you fight 3 nightmares. They drop this little orb thing, and you get a cutscene where you see a shadow version of yourself talking to you as if they're the Darkness. That's it. Yeah, that's really it. So that's your first look at those pyramid ships, as in the Darkness is coming back. All in all, I really felt things were rushed along here. There was a lot of things that they really could have done better here. And in fact, everything was on the moon too, outside of that one step that you had to go do 2 lost sectors on another planet. That was it. The story never really felt as if there was a major threat because of this. It was very self-contained to the moon, and I really wish Bungie would start to reach out a lot more with their storylines. Forsaken kind of had the same problem where everything was on the Tangled Shore, but then you finally got to go to the Dreaming City after that. So at least there was a little bit of leeway there, but the fact of the matter is this time it was all on the moon. Also, I really wish Bungie would stop doing these short 4-hour stories, calling them expansions that can be finished on day one on all 3 of your characters. I really want Bungie to actually go big next time. Make it feel like I'm actually doing something or exploring something for a change. So all in all, I'd say if I had to give it a rating, I'd say the story gets a 6 out of 10 on my things. Before anyone jumps to the defense of Bungie here, I'm well aware that Bungie said that this is an evolving story that will change over the course of the year, but this discussion is specifically for the story as it exists at its launch, nothing further. Okay, so that's everything in regards to the story. So if you skipped ahead, welcome back. We are now going to talk about the next section of my video here, which is going to be discussing the raids, specifically as it pertains to this world's first race, the first 24 hours, and the contest modifier. So this is really what I want to say is going to be my biggest talking point of the video, and I want to spend a lot of time on this to make sure that it's understood where I'm coming from here on this. So personally, I'm tired of this big craze that Bungie seems to have with the day one raid and the world's first chase. I know some people enjoy watching their favorite content creators push through this content, solve the puzzles, but honestly, everything in year 2 was a glorification of these content creators. There was never anything to give your average player who plays a lot of Destiny and has fun with the game. There was nothing to kind of uplift these people a bit. First, it was the raid belts that Bungie did. Then it was the exclusive 24-hour clear emblem. And now they introduced this contest modifier. I'm getting really tired of this, Bungie. It just seems like you're just continuing to banter for the content creators when you already give them enough to begin with. And, we can just look to the exclusive capture events where they get to play the expansion like a couple weeks before anyone else gets to look at things, for instance. Or we can point to the fact that Bungie invites these people to events when they really should be talking to people who really play the game more often. I will be completely honest here. If it wasn't for the 24-hour emblem, I likely would not have pushed all the way to 920 power, and many of my forthcoming complaints would not be present here. I personally consider myself to be very hardcore on the PvE side of this game, and if I'm having trouble doing these kind of challenges, then there's a problem with the game. These quick launch chases always show the game's more glaring problems, and this kind of really needs to stop. I get this whole concept behind the contest modifier, but let's be serious, Bungie. This is an in-game PvE activity. It is a cooperative experience. This is not competitive multiplayer, and if someone preps more for the raid, then they should damn well be rewarded for doing that. Period. If it affects the outcome of the race, who gives a damn? If it was the fault of the game itself, like an unforeseen means to level up, an example, we had the issue with Black Armory where people were farming pranograms. Bungie, suck it up. Fix it for the next one and be done with it. That was a problem with your game, something you should have seen coming, and you should have fixed it. Don't punish everyone else because of this. The modifier basically acts as a complete lockout to any teams that aren't comprised of well-knit, large clans that leave smaller sized clans well out of any form of means to clear the raid on the first day and locking themselves out of these exclusive emblems that you are presenting for these clears. My clan, for instance, we have a very tight-knit group of people. We are considering ourselves moderate to hardcore PvE players. We have many raid completions under our belt. We help people in the community clear the raid. And honestly, we felt more prepared for day one than we ever have before. We were all well close to the 920, if not over that 920, and we couldn't clear the second encounter. We only had about 3.5 hours of play, but the fact of the matter is most other groups were at the final boss by the time we were just getting to that second encounter. We feel locked out by this day one experience. I know many other in the community also feel the way. This kind of is the reason why raids get such a bad rap in this community and why lots of people don't really participate in this content. If you would stop bantering to these content creators, then you might actually get some more people involved in this content. If we feel locked out from day one by the contest modifier, imagine what other groups of players with even lower skill levels than us who also want to try it feel like. Very few people in this community even care about this to begin with. These day one completions or world's first clears aren't an endless talking point, Bungie, as you seem to think it is. The raid gets cleared, people learn how to do it, and then they can play it whenever they feel ready. Nobody cares that Clan X just got world's first again. It is completely irrelevant to the game itself. It's a big thing on the first day, the raid gets cleared by the first team, viewership immediately tanks after that. People are just there to learn the mechanics so they can go and do the raid later. The day after sometimes has your hardcore fans still talking about it, but most of the people in the player base is already done with it. So why are you still worrying so much about this? You really shouldn't be doing this, Bungie. So personally, I really would like to see this all stop. No more day one emblem, no more contest modifier. Just let people push for the raid at their own pace, get rewarded for it when they complete it. When they do. If you want to reward the first team to complete it, by all means, go right ahead and do that. But the fact of the matter is when you're locking out a majority of the player base with the contest modifier, it's only hurting the player base as a whole. Affecting the chase of everyone else just to preserve a competition for a PvE cooperative activity needs to stop dead. Alright, also, Bungie, it's time to let the raid team go back to the older raids. Give these older raids much needed patch updates to give the longevity back to this content. Don't just release a raid and then just be done with it. It helps to make the longevity of the title itself much better when there's more in-game content to work on. I'll talk about this a little more later on, but in terms of where we're at in terms of this discussion, that's kind of where it is. So before I kind of wrap everything up here, I want to talk a little bit about Garden of Salvation. Again, like I said, our team played for 3.5 hours yesterday, got to the second encounter, and we couldn't proceed any further. I personally watched some other people do it after that to kind of get an idea of how the raid worked, and this is my feedback on that. So I really like the intuitiveness of design on this new raid. The whole tether system to go from box to player to player to player to wherever you're depositing it, that was really cool. Setting of the raid, really well done. The art and environment teams knocked it out of the park once again. This was a great raid in those regards. Boss fights were really neat, and they continue the model that the raid team follows, which is each encounter builds upon the previous, so you get this aspect of learning. The raid also has what appears to be a lot of secrets that we can discover, and this will keep the community engaged in the content for the weeks to come, so that's great. My two main criticisms of the raid are honestly more than likely influenced by the contest modifier, so in general, assume this criticism applies to day one encounter design more than anything else in the future. So first point is that the second encounter, which was the Conflux 2.0 defense thing, it was way too long and unforgiving. It left way too much room for one simple error that ruins the entire process. It kind of gives me reminiscence of the Oryx fight, where if one bomb got missed, the entire thing was done. I think what Bungie really should have done here was split it into two smaller encounters where you had to capture the 4 pillars, and then the second one after that would be to defend the 4 pillars while attacking the middle pillar. That would have been better. Second point, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree or disagree here, is that the final boss fight was a bit too much in regards to the day one. So remember, the whole contest modifier, people were considered 20 power under the encounter, so everything would kill you really quickly. The fact that they had so much going on, it took so long for teams to kind of actually work out the encounters there, to actually develop any strategies that most people just got burned out really quickly. Again, the raid team also didn't take any risks in regards to how the fight worked. The same boss formula, you do mechanics to break the shield, there's a small mechanic in the middle of the damage phase to extend it, and that's it. I'd really like to see the raid team do a lot more next time, so sit down, talk about it, get away from this consistent formula, and change things for the better of the game in the future. So that's all I have on raids. So next step, we're going to talk about the power grind. So the change of the grind to power from Forsaken to Shadowkeep. And first and foremost, we have now officially come full circle. First, it was too easy with Destiny 2's launch. Then there was no power grind with Curse of Osiris. Came a little more standardized and better feeling with Warmind. Forsaken was a bit too grindy, but it then eased out through the rest of the year with all the additions of the activities. And now with Shadowkeep, they've revamped, and we're kind of in this hybrid place between Forsaken and Warmind. There's no longer this abundance of sources of drops, so you're back to fighting RNG for your drops. One of my big issues with Shadowkeep's powerful gear is that you can try to pace yourself to maximize your gains, but the game can easily screw you when you do that because you can get a powerful drop, but guess what? It's already in a slot that has an item that's higher power than that drop. So that's basically a lost cause. Season of Opulence remedied this with the Chalice of Opulence. This allowed you to place powerful drops where you needed them. Why did you get rid of this, Bungie? This was the best thing about Season 7. I honestly thought that whole Lectern of Enhancement thing was going to be the new Chalice of Opulence. And it really should have been where the Lectern gives you a limited number of powerful drops in a week, and then you could upgrade the Lectern as you went along by doing higher difficulty Nightmare Hunts, for instance. I'm baffled by how Bungie can go forward so much and then fall down to even worse places afterwards by making these very minor changes in the end. I wish I knew. I don't. Blue gear and legendary gear now drops from -3 to 0 on your character's base power. So this basically means that they are identical. So it removes the differentiation of these drops and makes them unimportant. So you lose all of that aspect of, well, if I get a legendary, it's better than this blue I get. That's gone. It's no longer there. Personally, I think there should have been a way to move the needle forward, even if it's very slow. Sure, the artifact was great and all, and this is a game changer where you can just get infinite power if you have infinite time to play. But would it really kill you, Bungie, to make a legendary have the possibility to go +1 higher than the base until you hit the hard cap? Just think about that in the future. At least that would make an enticement to constantly play the game and try to get these legendaries. Next up, we had the issue where tokens were used. Once again, some vendors seem to work, others do not. Why were they not all standardized? Please make them all the same. I don't want to see that in the future. I'm also not a fan of giving ranked modes infinite power drops. So Infamy, Valor, Glory, don't do that, Bungie. It invalidates PvE experiences because basically you're saying that doing these PvP modes gives you infinite powerful drops and that it's better than PvE when your PvE player base remains the largest in the game. There's no limit to how many of those you can earn a week, while PvE is limited to those powerful sources. Get rid of this in Season 9 or add in a mean for PvE to do the same by strike rank, for instance. Finally, I'm going to make my continued promise, as I said, to plug this in. I said I'd do this every video until this change happened. Get rid of the weekly lockouts on in-game PvE activities, Bungie. That means raids and dungeons. I'd like to be able to replay the content to farm for gear or good rolls. Obviously, this means you still lock out the powerful drops the first time you do it in a week, but allow players to chase the perfect rolls on gear or to chase the Year 2 exotic weapons that they're still missing. I know that you changed the raid exotic from Garden of Salvation to be a quest, and that's good, But thinking back to the content that's already out there, some people still need to get those year 2 exotics, so make it so. Then lastly, we have the big elephant in the room discussion point that people in the community have right now, which is the infusion system. I personally had no problems with cores in year 2. I think they were fine. But what I do have a problem with is how Bungie completely invalidated this material by using upgrade modules, which are even more limited than cores. Why? That's it. Just why? Get rid of them, Bungie. Get rid of upgrade modules, go back to cores, make more sources of get cores. Everything else will settle into place just fine after that. But stop doing this mass material deprecation. It hurts the game. Alright, so now we're going to get into the back set of the discussion on the video. So we'll start with the new destination, which is an old destination, the moon. So the moon comes back. It was the smallest destination in Destiny 1, but it got a complete facelift in Destiny 2, and it's returned to this game, and it really shows for the better. My entire first day with Shadowkeep was this great big nostalgia trip back to D1 areas, only to find out that they have been changed or something completely new is there. This new region is also a lot larger than the first moon, and it makes it feel like a true expansion has happened to the game because of this. I've discovered a few things on the moon which are completely inaccessible at the time, so, this means that there are still secrets to be discovered on this destination. And this will keep me personally engaged in this content for the weeks to come, along with the community, who I will admit is much better at finding these things than myself. All in all, this was a wonderful addition to the title. I'm glad Bungie brought the moon back. Now, can we get our other D1 destination back, please? Waiting for Venus. I'd also like to see the old raids, but that's just me. I'm glad it turned out as well as it did. I'll give Bungie a great big thumbs up here. This was probably the highlight of the expansion for me. Okay, sandbox changes. So once again, we go through this thing with every update to the game where it seems like the sandbox team is the failing point of Bungie. And once again, I am pleased to say that they are again the failing point of Destiny. So where do I start? So much has changed at once, so little has changed in the end. But I think I can summarize what Sandbox team did to the game with the following statement. You have gotten weaker. Period. That's it. Supers. Reduced in power, reduced in survivability. Although once again the intent was to make PvP not a superfest and to make them combated. The end result was that the PvE side of the game got smacked a lot harder than it really needed to, and now it makes them feel kind of worthless. Next up, we have the auto reload thing. So the rally barricades and lunafaction boots on warlocks. What they were replaced with is absolutely laughable in comparison. It's like outlaw. That's what you get. If it's not even outlaw. I can understand why Bungie did this from their perspective versus the change that they made, but this is a problem with Bungie's raid encounter design and philosophy. I said this back in the competitive video. This isn't a problem with weapons themselves. If the raid team would stop making stationary bosses that have short burst damage phases, this wouldn't be a problem. I'm waiting to be wowed by the raid team. Make something like Oryx, which involves mechanics-based damage, or something that has a massive health pool that you have to tank down over the course of the encounter and then have to use mechanics to get damage buffs against. Mix things up. If Bungie would have stopped making things so predictable that all solutions became auto-reload mountaintop, this wouldn't be an issue, period. It really wouldn't be an issue. Personally, though, if you're taking this the wrong way, let me just clarify here. My criticism is the fact that the change they made makes the Lunafaction Boots exotic feel completely lackluster, and honestly, they'll probably just sit in my vault for the next 6 months. And the fact is, they also made Rally Barricade completely pointless. Like, there's no reason to use Rally Barricade anymore in Titans. I think they really need to go back to the drawing board, and they need to do something else here. It's that simple. What they did to change these things it's just not going to work. So go back and do it. Critical damage on miners has been neutered into the ground, and while not noticeable in your standard content, if you play any type of in-game PvE content, you will notice the difference, trust me, and you will not be happy with this change. Next up, we have the fact that many pieces of exotic armor alongside numerous exotic weapons are still collecting dust in players' vaults. They are in desperate need of power-ups, and this has been the case since the start of year 2, but it seems like the Sandbox team just doesn't care anymore. Exotic catalysts are still missing for a large number of weapons. These should honestly be released alongside exotic weapons as they come out. So, we put this all together, and what do we say? The Sandbox team always seems to take a massive hammer to problems that can be solved with a screwdriver. I really wish we would stop with these big blanket changes that happen once every 3 to 6 months in favor of smaller updates that occur once every month. So instead of doing this massive nerf on fusion rifles, instead tune the damage down a smaller amount and see how that changes the game. If it's going in a positive direction, then maybe try tweaking it a little further down next month. But if it's getting negative reaction, then you have a lot shorter of a time span to revert the change in the next month such that you don't ruin the experience for the rest of the player base. See what works, see what doesn't, make smaller adjustments, and make them more frequently. That way the game doesn't feel ruined with each update and players have to wait 3 to 6 months for the change to come. So I'm going to hopefully not have to bash on Sandbox team anymore. I know you guys do a lot of hard work. I can personally understand that. I did game mods for 7-8 years, and as a single developer, I understand that you guys have to do a lot more than I did, but this was my motto, was to change small and change up, and honestly, it worked really well, and I really think you should take a page from that playbook and use that going forward. Okay, we're almost there, folks. New light. So this was the other big half of the release of the expansion, was the release of New Light, which is the free-to-play entry point to the game. And no, angry community, again, I'm going to reiterate, the release of New Light was not the reason for the server blunders on launch day. Stop blaming these people. So let's spend some time talking about what went right and what went wrong. Again, we'll do the good first, and then we'll get to the not-so-good later. So, going free-to-play fresh off the heels of leaving Activision was a great move for Destiny. Given the mass amount of content that the game already has, the New Light player can jump into Destiny and experience some of the best that the game has to offer. The fact that you reduxed the very first Destiny 1 campaign mission was great. This gets players right into the action. They learn about the introduction to the story, about their character, and about the universe. They learn the game's mechanics all in one fell swoop, and then lets them loose into the world. There is one thing that you could have done better here, but I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The instant 750 power is both good and bad. I get the whole, well, you'll need to level up first before you can play with us argument, and I like the ability for players to have the option to be ready for the content right away. This does also have a little bit of a negative pull, and I'll explain shortly as well, but again, it's good and bad. The amount of free content that was given to New Light players was great. I like that Bungie decided to take a really big risk here, giving away all of Year 1, a good part of Year 2, and the Year 3 major destination for free. This has a lot of staying power and a lot of pull on new players, and word will spread quickly once people actually try this, and we'll get other people to try it, which was kind of this chaining effect that I think Bungie was going for. So, big props there. So now we need to talk about the negatives of New Light. So, first and foremost, I am absolutely not a fan of how the release of Shadowkeep instantly invalidated all of the work of player progression from vanilla launch to the end of Year 2 for veteran players. Effectively, all that people from these previous releases got was extra materials at launch, any cosmetic sets they had before, and given the fact of the note regarding enhancement cores, even that was nothing. This is the other half of that required playtime argument. Even though players would have had to put in the time, this is a RPG game, Bungie. The initial leveling climb is part of an RPG game. I know that some people aren't a fan of that notion, but it should be expected that in an RPG game you have to put in the time to be able to play in-game content. What you should have done here is you should have made it so in-game players can be rewarded for helping new players reach in-game levels. The Division 2 has a system that they have in their game called the Shepherd system. I would honestly advise you to take a page from their playbook and do something similar in Destiny 2. Next up is the old campaigns. It's good that you made them accessible to new light players, but you hid them from these players. It's kind of strange that you make them hard to get to when this was one of your big selling points to new light people, is that, hey, you can come play the old campaigns. Really, what should have happened was it should have went from the New Light Redux mission straight to Homecoming. It should have put them right into the Red War, and then used the vanilla D2 campaign to unlock all of the destinations. Yes, there is some length to the D2 campaign, but it would have been a means to progress through all the worlds, and the first campaign would have been done at the same time. It also affects the notion of being able to replay missions outside of this heroic playlist, and that's something I've been bantering on about for all of my videos as well. So, some more needs to be done there. Finally, giving the new light players the veteran UI, where you literally drop them in and here's your map. Go. It was quite confusing. From a guiding perspective, you should have had a lot more in the UI to kind of guide players through the experience, to get them to do the new story missions that they haven't done yet, or to go do a strike, or play a Crucible match, or go try out Gambit for a change. It needs to be highlighted on the UI instead of just saying, here you go. Come ask questions in the Reddit. Like, don't do that. All in all, this was a good learning process for Bungie. I'm glad that they made this new light endeavor. I hope it continues in the future, but I think some of these things need to be rectified a little bit and then have kind of a second wave release that gets done at some point to get a better handle on things moving forward. And I think Bungie said that they were still going to reiterate this process, so I have hope for the future of this. And again, please keep up the good work there. Finally, we have the final talking point, which is the relevant content in the game. Keeping pace with some of the concerns I listed before, it's the continual push for deprecation of old content when new content arrives that worries me the most about this game. The reason it does is because the amount of new content is usually a lot lower than the cumulative amount of old content in the game. And the fact that you're constraining people to very small amounts of relevant content to be able to make progression kind of really hurts the feeling of the game itself to be able to play and still make progress. The changes that the game made to introduce multiple tiers of powerful gear should have been a means to keep old content relevant while highlighting new content. So, for example, what I think Bungie should have done was their tier 3 drops, or pinnacle drops if you want to call them that, should have been Garden of Salvation, Nightfall, Vex Offensive, and the Shadowkeep PvE content. So basically, all the new content is highlighted as the best powerful drops. Then the tier 2 drops, for instance, could have been things like the year 2 raids, Shattered Throne, Strike Playlist, Gambit Weekly, Crucible Weekly, Prime Engrams. So you're kind of more recent content, but not the all of them are recent content. Just like the pinnacle recent content, and then your repeatable competitive content. Finally, the tier 1 would have been year 1 content, so the older pinnacle content, and then anything else that was new light related or any other powerful drop sources. That way, there is still an abundance of things players can do to move the needle forward. And this really highlights the big problem with the game, particularly with raids, where Bungie releases a lot of really popular content and then leaves it to dry in the long term. I use this example a lot, the Riven encounter and Last Wish. The issue with the Riven encounter has been present from the launch of the raid. A simple patch could have addressed this a long time ago. It would have kept the content relevant. It would have kept the integrity of the design of the encounter as well. So I feel, given this new model of content coming and going with each season, having a larger list of older, relevant content to remain in the game as time goes forward would do well for the future of the title, especially seeing as all legendary armor now drops as armor 2.0. So, just something to think about. So, all in all, this kind of is the big ticket issues in Destiny 2 right now. So, let's look ahead to what's coming and then we'll wrap things up here. So, Season 8, it's fresh off the press. We've only gotten started with the third year of Destiny 2. Again, there seems to be the problem where Bungie does many things right, but the same story is what shines through in the end, which is those few nitpicky issues that dwarf all of the positives. In terms of the outlook of the game, however, I'm keeping a very positive view on things. Shadowkeep did a lot of things right. Very few things that did wrong, but again, those negatives were hurtful for the game. I will be honest, Bungie, I am extremely serious about that raid stuff. I'm done with this pointless grind at launch just to satisfy a push with terrible RNG drop lugs, only to have that contest modifier ruin any chances of getting that day one clear that everyone seems to be so adamantly hooked on, if you want to say that. Just get rid of it. No one cares. While the change to the raid exotic quest back from RNG to quest was a good move, this again doesn't address the fact that all of the year 2 exotics are still RNG gated. So get rid of those blockouts on the raids. Let them be grinded. So kind of wrapping things up, where does it leave the state of Destiny 2? So at the end of Season 6, I said things were not good. Well, I mean, we literally just got done with a season of Gambit. It wasn't fun. But Season 7, that was fantastic. Season of Opulence was a great season, and I really felt that the game was a solid 8 out of 10 at that point. Shadowkeep, I think we fall back to 7 out of 10, just because of the strides forward, but the major steps back at the same time. I think Bungie's big issue here, and the big takeaway point, is that Bungie needs to stop catering to the ultra hardcore. The fact that you're doing this is you're hurting the rest of the player base while you do so in the long term. Sure, you'll satisfy them in the short term. Sure, they'll be happy to talk about your game if you do that. But you're still losing players on the other end of the spectrum. And I can guarantee you, those numbers on that end of the spectrum far outweigh the view on this end of the spectrum. So take a step back, look what's better for the community as a whole, and act upon that instead of just giving the ultra hardcore another bantering point. So, in terms of the series, I don't know when we're doing another one of these. I may not need one for Season 9, depending on what happens, but if there is something coming in Season 9 that needs discussion, that's probably when the next video will be. So that will be in December. Otherwise, that's probably going to do it. So that's it for this video. If you've hung around for this far, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you sitting here for 50 minutes listening to my feedback. If you have any feedback yourself, please drop a comment in there with your feedback. I'll be sure to read through the comments and, we'll get a discussion going. I'd like to hear what others in the community are thinking, and it's good to see some conversation going. It helps move the state of the game forward in a positive direction. So other than that, that's all I've got. So thanks for watching the video, and I will see everyone